Welcome back to Quick Speak, the English podcast that helps you learn new vocabulary and explore interesting topics.
Yes, that's right.
Today, we are going to talk about forgiveness.
Forgiveness.
Yes, forgiveness.
Okay.
I think it's a really important concept in life and in relationships.
Yeah.
But what exactly is forgiveness? I think a
Yeah.
lot of people might assume it's just about saying, it's okay, after someone has done something wrong.
Yeah, that's a common misunderstanding.
Yeah.
Forgiveness is a lot deeper than that.
Okay.
It's about an internal shift, a decision you make to let go of anger
Okay.
and resentment towards someone who has hurt you.
So it's not about them.
Right.
It's about you and how you choose to deal with the situation internally.
Exactly.
Okay.
And this is an important point.
Okay.
Because it highlights that forgiveness is for your benefit.
Mm-hmm.
It's about freeing yourself from carrying around the weight of negative emotions.
I like that. It's like putting down a heavy suitcase that you've been carrying around for too long.
Yes, that's a great analogy.
You know, it's funny you mentioned the physical aspect.
Yeah.
I recently read some studies that link forgiveness to better heart health.
Yeah.
It seems that letting go of grudges can actually be good for your body.
That's right.
Yeah.
There's a growing body of research that supports that idea.
Really?
Yeah, forgiving others has been linked to lower stress levels, reduced anxiety, depression, and even a stronger immune system.
That's pretty amazing.
So it's not just about being nice,
Yeah.
but it's about taking care of your well-being.
I guess it makes sense.
Yeah.
If you think about it, when you're constantly replaying a hurtful situation in your mind,
Mm-hmm.
that keeps your body in a state of tension and stress.
Exactly. It's like your body is stuck in fight or flight mode even though the threat might be long gone.
Right.
Forgiveness can help you switch off that alarm system.
So if holding on to anger is so bad for us, how do we actually go about forgiving someone? Especially if they've really hurt us.
It's not always easy.
Yeah.
And it's definitely a journey, not a quick fix.
Right.
It takes time and effort.
Okay.
One thing that can be really helpful is self-compassion.
Self-compassion.
Yeah.
What role does that play in forgiving other people?
Well, they're more connected than you might think.
Okay.
Imagine if you're constantly criticizing yourself,
Mm-hmm.
focusing on your flaws and mistakes.
Yeah.
It's much harder to extend understanding and compassion to others when you're treating yourself harshly.
I see what you mean.
Right.
We need to be kind to ourselves first
Yes.
before we can truly be kind to others.
That's a great way to put it. Self-compassion allows us to acknowledge our own imperfections and mistakes with kindness.
Okay.
And when we can do that for ourselves,
Yeah.
it becomes easier to see other people's flaws with more empathy and understanding.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
You know, it's like the saying, hurt people hurt people. When we recognize the hurt within ourselves, we can often better understand why someone might have hurt us.
That's a profound insight.
Yeah.
And that understanding can be a stepping stone
Okay.
on the path to forgiveness.
So we've been talking about the internal work of forgiveness.
Right.
But what about the actual relationship with the person who hurt us?
Mm-hmm.
Do we need to reconcile with them to truly forgive?
That's where things get interesting.
Yeah.
And it's a question that often causes confusion.
Okay.
Forgiveness and reconciliation are often thought of as the same thing, but they are actually distinct concepts.
What's the difference
Yeah.
between forgiving someone
Okay.
and reconciling with them?
Forgiveness, as we discussed, is an internal process. It's a decision you make for your own well-being.
Okay.
Reconciliation, on the other hand, is about the relationship itself.
Yeah.
It might involve rebuilding trust,
Okay.
reestablishing contact, or even just having a conversation. But you can forgive someone without ever actually reconciling with them.
So let me get this straight.
Yeah.
You're saying I could forgive someone who betrayed me, but still choose not to be friends with them anymore.
Precisely. Sometimes reconciliation might not be possible,
Wow.
or it might even be unhealthy for you.
That's an important distinction to make.
Yeah.
So forgiveness doesn't necessarily mean wiping the slate clean
Right.
or pretending that nothing happened.
Exactly. And another important point to remember is that forgiveness doesn't require anything from the other person.
Oh, okay.
They don't even have to know you've forgiven them. You're not doing it for them. You're doing it for you.
Wow. That's a powerful concept.
Yeah.
It really puts the power back in your own hands, doesn't it? You're taking control of your emotional well-being regardless of what the other person does or doesn't do.
You got it. It's an act of self-empowerment.
Yeah.
And a step towards healing.
I'm feeling lighter already just thinking about it.
Kid.
But I have to be honest. Sometimes forgiveness feels impossible.
Yeah.
What about when the hurt is very deep?
Right.
Or when the person who wronged you doesn't seem to feel any remorse?
Those are valid feelings.
Yeah.
And it's important to acknowledge that forgiveness can be incredibly challenging, especially in those types of situations.
Yeah.
Remember, it's a process that takes time.
Okay.
And there are certain techniques that can help us navigate this complex terrain.
Like what?
Well,
What kind of techniques can help us when forgiveness feels out of reach?
one thing that's crucial is to acknowledge your feelings.
Mm-hmm.
Don't try to suppress your anger or sadness.
Okay.
Let yourself feel them fully.
So you're saying don't bottle it up.
Exactly. Bottling up your emotions often makes them more intense.
Yeah.
Allowing yourself to experience those feelings can actually be the first step in releasing them.
That makes sense. So what comes next after we've acknowledged the pain?
Mindfulness can be a powerful tool in this process.
Mindfulness.
By paying attention to your thoughts and feelings without judgment, you can begin to detach from the negative emotions
Fair.
that are keeping you stuck.
So instead of dwelling on the past
Right.
and replaying the hurt over and over again,
Mm-hmm.
we can bring our attention back to the present moment.
Yes. And there are specific forgiveness meditations that can guide you through this process. They can help you focus on your breath, become aware of your body, and cultivate a sense of peace.
That sounds interesting.
Yeah,
I'd love to learn more about those techniques sometime.
absolutely. There are many resources available online and in books.
Okay.
We can definitely talk more about that later. For now, let's continue exploring this process of forgiveness.
Okay, so we've talked about acknowledging our feelings
Mhm.
and practicing mindfulness.
Yeah.
What other techniques can help us on this journey?
Another helpful technique is writing a forgiveness letter.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to send it to the person who hurt you. But the act of putting your feelings into words can be very cathartic. And sometimes just the act of expressing those feelings, even if it's just to yourself, can be a big step towards letting them go.
Okay,
It allows you to process the experience and start to move on.
this is all really helpful. But what about when we're struggling to even want to forgive?
Mm-hmm.
What if a part of us feels like the person doesn't deserve it?
That's a very common feeling,
Yeah.
and it's completely understandable.
Okay.
Sometimes forgiveness is less about the other person
Mm-hmm.
and more about freeing ourselves from the pain they cause.
Right.
It's like we're carrying a heavy burden,
Okay.
and forgiveness allows us to put it down.
I love that image. It's a powerful reminder that forgiveness is ultimately a gift we give to ourselves.
Precisely. It allows us to move forward without being chained to the past. We can break free from the anger and resentment that's holding us back.
I'm starting to realize that forgiveness is a lot more nuanced than I initially thought.
Yeah.
It's not about condoning someone's actions,
Right.
but about taking care of our own well-being.
Exactly. It's about choosing peace over resentment,
Mhm.
healing over hurt.
Speaking of the healing process,
Right.
you mentioned earlier that there are stages of forgiveness.
Mm-hmm.
Can you elaborate on that a bit?
Sure.
I'm curious to know what those stages look like.
Absolutely. It's helpful to understand that forgiveness is a process that unfolds over time.
Okay.
There are generally 4 stages that people go through.
Okay. I'm all ears. Tell me more about these stages.
The first stage is called uncovering. This is where you really acknowledge the pain and allow yourself to feel all those difficult emotions.
Okay.
Anger, sadness, betrayal, whatever comes up for you.
So it's like we have to fully face the hurt before we can start to heal from it.
Exactly. Suppressing those feelings will only make them stronger in the long run.
Mm.
It's important to give yourself permission to feel the pain, acknowledge it, and begin to understand it.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
What happens after we've acknowledged the pain?
That's where the decision phase comes in.
Okay.
This is where you make a conscious choice to forgive.
Okay.
It's a commitment you make to yourself to work towards forgiveness.
It sounds almost like a decision we make with intention, like setting a goal.
In a way, yes.
Mm.
It's a deliberate choice to embark on the journey of forgiveness.
Okay.
It doesn't mean you'll suddenly feel forgiving right away,
Right.
but it's an important first step.
Okay, so we uncover the pain,
Right.
then we make the decision to forgive. What's next in this process?
Then comes the work phase.
Okay.
This is where the real heavy lifting happens.
Oh,
You start to actively try to understand the person who hurt you.
that sounds tough,
Yeah.
especially if they haven't apologized or shown any remorse.
It can be challenging, but it's a crucial part of the process.
Okay.
It might involve trying to see things from their perspective,
Mm-hmm.
considering their background, or any circumstances that might have contributed to their actions.
So it's not about excusing what they did,
Right.
but about trying to understand where they were coming from.
Exactly. It's about developing empathy,
Okay.
which can make it easier to let go of the resentment.
Mm-hmm.
You're not condoning their behavior, but you're trying to see them as a complex human being
Right.
who might be struggling with their own issues.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
It's harder to stay angry at someone when you can see them as a human being
Yeah.
with their own flaws and vulnerabilities.
Exactly. And that leads us to the final stage,
Right.
the deepening phase.
Okay.
This is where you start to find meaning in your suffering,
Mm-hmm.
and you might even experience a sense of release from the emotional pain.
Wow. It sounds like a real transformation.
It can be. You might discover a new sense of compassion, not just for the person who hurt you, but for yourself and others as well. You might also develop a deeper understanding of your own values
Mm-hmm.
and what's truly important to you.
So forgiveness can actually lead to personal growth and a deeper understanding of ourselves and the world around us.
Absolutely. It's a powerful journey,
Well,
and it can take time, but the rewards are immense.
this is all so fascinating, but I have to ask,
Yeah,
what about those times when we just can't seem to let go of the anger?
right.
What if we get stuck in one of those stages?
It's important to remember that forgiveness is a process,
Okay.
and there are bound to be setbacks along the way.
Mm-hmm.
It's okay to struggle, and it's okay to ask for help.
That's reassuring to hear.
Yeah.
Sometimes it feels like we're supposed to just snap our fingers and forgive,
Mm-hmm.
but it's comforting to know that it's okay to ask for support when we need it.
Absolutely. There are many resources available, like books, articles,
Mhm.
and even therapists who specialize in forgiveness. They can provide guidance and tools to help you navigate the process.
So we don't have to go through this alone.
Not at all.
Right.
There's a whole community of people who understand the challenges of forgiveness,
Mm-hmm.
and they're there to offer support and encouragement.
Well, that's really good to know.
Yeah.
I'm starting to see how forgiveness isn't just a nice idea.
Right.
It's a powerful tool for healing
Yes.
and personal growth.
Uh-huh.
It's not about letting someone off the hook,
Right.
but about taking care of ourselves and creating healthier relationships.
You've hit the nail on the head. It's about recognizing that holding on to anger and resentment ultimately hurts us more than it hurts the other person.
Mm-hmm.
Forgiveness allows us to release that burden
Right.
and move forward with a lighter heart.
And it's a journey, not a destination.
Well said. It's something we can continue to learn and grow from throughout our lives.
You know, we've talked a lot about forgiving others,
Mm-hmm.
but what about forgiving ourselves?
Right.
I think that can be even harder sometimes.
You're absolutely right. Self-forgiveness is so crucial, yet we often neglect it.
Mm-hmm.
We can be our own harshest critics, holding on to guilt and shame long after we've made a mistake.
Yeah. It's like we replay those past mistakes on a loop in our minds, constantly beating ourselves up.
Exactly. And that kind of negative self-talk can be incredibly damaging
Yeah.
to our self-esteem and overall well-being.
So how do we start to forgive ourselves? Where do we even begin?
Well, it starts with recognizing that we're all human
Mm-hmm.
and we all make mistakes. Nobody's perfect.
Right.
We're all on this journey of learning and growing, and mistakes are inevitable.
Easier said than done sometimes.
It definitely takes practice.
Yeah.
One helpful technique is to treat yourself with the same kindness and compassion
Mm-hmm.
you would offer a friend.
So if a friend came to me feeling guilty about something,
Right.
I wouldn't judge them or dwell on their mistake.
Mm-hmm.
I'd offer support, encouragement, and understanding.
Exactly. We deserve that same level of kindness from ourselves.
That's a really good point.
Yeah.
I think I'm often much harder on myself than I would ever be on someone I care about.
That's a common pattern.
Yeah.
But with awareness and effort, we can start to shift.
Okay.
We can learn to challenge our negative self-talk
Mm-hmm.
and replace it with more compassionate and understanding thoughts.
This has been such an insightful conversation.
Good.
I'm feeling so much more knowledgeable about forgiveness now.
I'm glad to hear that.
And I'm definitely motivated to put some of these ideas into practice in my own life.
I'm so glad to hear that. Remember, forgiveness is a gift you give to yourself.
Mm-hmm.
It's a path to healing, growth, and deeper connection with yourself and others.
Well, that's a perfect note to end on. Thank you so much for this enlightening conversation about forgiveness.
You're welcome.
I know I've learned a lot today.
It's been my pleasure.
And to all of our listeners out there,
Yeah.
thank you for joining us on Quick Speak, the English podcast that helps you improve your language skills while exploring fascinating topics like forgiveness.